Hey guys, this is Cade Lamb with Fear Not Do Right, and this is the Fear Not Do Right podcast. So today I'm here with a very cool guest. Most of you guys call him the American Sheriff, but I just call him Dad. I'm here with Sheriff Mark Lamb from Pinal County. What's going on, Dad?
It's going good. I finally made it on the show. I can't believe it.
I know. Well, we've been booked up the last few weeks. You know, a lot of people want to get on here, and you know, we were finally able to find a slot to fit you in.
Well, you've had some great guests, and you've had some great podcasts, and I think people are really loving it. And so it's gonna be tough, man. I got some big shoes to fill.
Yeah, but you've been extremely busy. Like, as someone who lives in a very close proximity to you, you are never home, and you just are 100% working all the time.
I think that when I tell people I'm busy or they think I'm busy, I don't think they truly understand just how busy we are. We're on the go nonstop. We get home late at night. And even when you get home, you're tinkering around trying to fix the stuff at the house. So it just never ends. But you get to see that firsthand.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're either on the road doing American Sheriff stuff, or when you're home, you're doing Pinal County Sheriff stuff. And then when you're home, you're also, if you're not doing Pinal County Sheriff stuff, you're still doing American Sheriff stuff with, you know, phone calls and voicemails and invoices and fivering and what other junk, you know.
It's just about all the websites I have, I've built. Not that they're anything to write home about, but I've just had to self-teach myself all these things because that's just what it takes to get it done.
Now, here's what I don't think a lot of people understand, though, because, you know, you say, like, you're busy and people just don't get it. You've always been this busy. As I've known you in my 25 years, you've known me my entire life, but you've always been this busy before you were the sheriff.
I've always owned my own businesses. You're right. And even when I was a cop, I would take all the extra shifts I could get, and then I would have a business on the side. At one point when I left the first agency I worked at so that I could come to Pinal County and be the sheriff, or at least start that path towards it, I took a $25,000 pay cut with 5 kids. So what I had to do was start a business. I started a pest control business. So I would work a graveyard shift, come home, sleep for 3 hours, go out and do pest control all day, go work out, and right back to work again for another 12-hour shift. And I would do that 3-4 days a week, and then I would on my days off I would do pest control all day. So yeah, you're right. I've always been busy, but I like to give this life everything I've got.
Now, aside from being the sheriff, you kind of got a couple of other projects going on with, you know, we've talked about it with Catherine Engelbrecht and True the Vote and a couple of other projects. So what else have you got going on right now? You
know, as a sheriff, you see a lot of things going on, and you always want to find ways that you can better help your country, your community. I saw the value of the sheriff in this country. The sheriffs are the last line of defense. They're one of the most important positions in this country. And so I've been fortunate enough to be around a lot of sheriffs. So I started a group called Protect America Now, which is sheriffs from across the country standing up for the rule of law, standing against bad policies, and standing for the constitutional rights of the people. And now we're busier than now more than ever because of this administration. And then we saw in 2020, I think it was on full display, that the vote was a little squampy. And 2,000 Mules exposed a lot of the ways that they were able to defraud the election. And I couldn't just sit and let that just be the way it was. And so I got involved. I got involved with Catherine Engelbrecht, Greg Phillips from True the Vote. They were the people that provided the information for 2,000 Mules. And we're working together at something called protectamerica.vote. So this is law enforcement, sheriffs in particular, working together to make sure that we have safe and secure elections and that the people can believe in the election, because I think your vote is one of the most important things you have in this country.
That's awesome. Now, is the Protect America Now, is it more so just like border sheriffs, or is it really all over the country?
No, Protect America Now is all over the country. The 7 executive members were from all different states. And then we've had more and more sheriffs sign up along the way. You know, it's been great. But the more this administration does their craziness, the more stands we have to take against them. And so a lot of people, a lot of sheriffs may or may not want to put themselves out there like that. And so the ones that have are willing to stand in the gap and take the shots.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but the sheriff is the highest elected judicial official in the United States, correct?
Highest elected executive branch official. We're actually in the executive branch because we don't, we just bring the people to the judicial branch for them to do their thing. So in the county, we're the highest elected officials and the highest law enforcement official in the county as well. The beauty of this and why this is important for the American people, especially as governments push more and more control, is your sheriff. It doesn't work for anybody. I don't work for the president. I don't work for the governor. I don't work for the board of supervisors in the county. I work directly for the people, and there's power in that. And so if the governor passes something, or what we saw in 2020, 2021, we saw a lot of municipalities, a lot of counties, a lot of governors, and even the president trying to force mandates and orders on us. And those aren't laws. And so we were able to just tell them to pound sand. We're not going to do it. We're not in for that. And so that's the beauty of the sheriff. If you have a good sheriff, he can stand up for what's right.
I was having a conversation last week with Sheriff Joe Arpaio and some lady. Legendary. We were having a conversation with this lady, and she was complaining about cops on the East Coast where they would just, they're almost like hunting down people to give tickets to, and they're enforcing all these mandates and these, just these stupid things. And again, as I understand it, the difference between like a police commissioner is they're an appointee by the mayor, and so they kind of fall subject to whatever their appointer wants.
Yeah, that's right. Cities and towns, typically the mayors and the city councils will hire those police chiefs. So if they want to keep their job, they got to do what the police chiefs or the mayors and the city councils want. The sheriffs are elected by the people, and so we have the ability to do it a little different. You look at what's happened with law enforcement in this country. We're not innocent in that, in the sense that how people view us because of guys enforcing things that they probably shouldn't have, like dragging kids out of restaurants because they didn't have a COVID vaccine, or arresting people at the beach who are all alone for not having a mask on, or for being out when they're not supposed to be out. Those are the things that I wished I wouldn't have seen from police officers across this country. I wish they would have had the courage to say, no, that's stupid, we're not doing that. Because that didn't help. That didn't help the way even the people who supported us in law enforcement, the supported law enforcement, started to say, hey, what's going on? Like, why are you guys doing this? So, yeah, I mean, there was things that I wish I wouldn't have seen. I wish that police would have had the courage to stand up and do it different. But, it is what it is. We just got to get past it.
Well, there was a couple of cops who did kind of stand up, and they were like, hey, we're not going to do this. And it cost them their jobs. But didn't you hire a couple of those guys?
So the vaccine mandate, I could see that coming. I really could. I could see not only private businesses, but I could see government getting ready to push this vaccine mandate. So I did a video one day. I told my PIO, that's a public information officer, I said, hey, let's do a video twofold. One, we're going to let people know that we're not doing vaccine mandates. And number two, this might be a hiring opportunity in a field where it's really hard to hire good people. So we did a video, and I just said, look, as a sheriff of Pinal County, I will never require a vaccine mandate. It is your personal health choice. And that opened the door because, initially they called me a conspiracy theorist. They're like, oh, my gosh, nobody's ever going to do that. It wasn't a week later that agencies and businesses started pushing vaccine mandates. And I could see it clearly, the writing on the wall. And fortunately, we were a little ahead of the game. And guys who were going to lose their jobs because of the vaccine mandates, guys who stood on their principles, who said, no, I'm not going to do that, they were able to find a home at our agency, and we got some really good police officers because of it. But more than anything, more than just the job, they wanted to work for somebody who would stand up for what they believed in, who wasn't afraid to stand up against the bullies out there, of this woke culture. That's what they wanted, and that's what they found at Pinal County.
It's interesting how different, one administration, like that element of leadership creates the difference it makes when it just enables shady characters to do shady things, and kind of puts the muffler on people who would do the right thing.
I would say that in any place, if you have a police agency that is viewed poorly by the community, it is probably a direct reflection of the leadership at the top. Those leaders set the tone, whether it's amongst the agency and amongst the troops, or whether it's in the community. They're responsible for setting that tone. And so most cops quit this profession because they're just tired of working for bad, I use air quotes when I say this, leadership, because they're really not leaders. A lot of these guys are just supervisors. They're in a position of authority, and but they're not really leading because nobody would really follow them if they didn't have to.
What do you think defines what's the difference between like a leader and a supervisor?
I think a leader can inspire the troops to do the job. I think a leader leads by example and shows them that he's willing to get down and get his hands dirty as well. And I think a leader is there to protect those who he leads. My job is to take the bullets for those people that are in my agency. They go out and they take the bullets in the community, the proverbial bullets in the community, sometimes literal bullets. But they go out and do that in the community. The least that I can do as a leader is take those shots for them in the public and protect them from the negativity and protect them from those things, and create an atmosphere where they're viewed as the heroes that they are.
Now, have you seen a difference in activity in Pinal County in the last, let's say, 3 years? Let's say from 2019 into 2020, 2021, 2022?
Absolutely. I mean, look, we're getting clobbered by border security, and that's not something that's outside of my control, and we do the best we can to fight it. But as far as crime in Pinal County, and I can't take all the credit for this, a lot of this belongs to it obviously belongs to the men and women that work for me, but it also belongs to the county attorney and the judges. But our crime index has dropped consistently over the last few years since 2017 when I took office. That means that we're seeing less crime in our communities. Now, we get the same things that everybody else gets. Fentanyl has been very pervasive into our society. We're seeing more and more fentanyl poisonings in our communities. You have your property thefts because as drug use rises, property thefts, breaking into cars, houses, that kind of stuff increases. But just the other day, even as it relates to border security, I was talking to one of my guys because I was going to do an interview on Fox, and I said, give me a feel for what you're seeing out there. And he said, look, Sheriff, we're finding bodies, which are humans being trafficked, but the drugs has been down for us. And it's because our informants are saying, avoid Pinal County. Don't go through Pinal County if you don't have to. Why? Because we'll chase them. We're going to catch you. If you run from us or you're transporting humans or drugs or breaking any other crime, we're going to chase him. We even had where we got into a pursuit with a guy. He turned around and went back to the county, one of the counties next to us, in hopes that we wouldn't chase him. But we caught him. So, yeah, I mean, people want to move to a community where I get people every day, and I know this is a long-winded answer, but I get people every day that will say to me, we moved to Pinal County because of you, because of what you do, and that makes you feel good. It makes you know that you've created a good environment for not just your people to work, but also for people to come and live.
Well, it's interesting to see, the uptick, especially along the border in other counties, with the human trafficking, with the cartel activity, with the fentanyl trafficking. When it was very weird because I was overseas when the change of administration took place, and we had just left country about like 3 weeks after the current administration took office, and not 10 days after we had left country, and it was probably 2 weeks after the current administration took office that there were just rocketing every night. There was just a huge uptick in rogue Shiite militia groups attacking, U.S. bases and coalition bases and stuff like that.
Look, your enemies see weakness. If you've got weak leadership, they see that weakness. They're going to try to exploit it, and that's what we have now in this country. We've got weak leadership at the top, and I'll tell you how you know it's weak. They blame everybody else, even if it was the fault of the previous administration. It's still weak leadership to get up and cry about it and not take any responsibility at all. But the reality is, it's not the fault of the previous administration. This is completely the fault of this current administration, and they should own it, but they don't. Their way of doing this is to blame it, and that sends a message of weakness and cowardice to the rest of the world that we see every day, or they are taken advantage of.
It's so interesting to see some of the actions being taken, because on one hand you want to be, well, this is just mental gymnastics and there's no way they have any idea what they're doing in there. But at the other hand, you see the effects of it and the direction and the trajectory that it's on, and you're like, this has to be incredibly deliberate in their approach, because everything is happening is mapped out, and you see it all throughout history with the classic strong men create good times create weak men men create hard times, and hard times create strong men. And you can see the escalation of that cycle through many of the policies and decisions being made.
I recently read an article, and it talked about the fall of Rome. And, we are following in the footsteps of the fall of Rome on so many levels. We're catering to these small, tiny fractions, very small percentage groups of people in this country. They want to find somebody that they can be a champion for, instead of actually just being a champion for the American people. I agree with you. I think that our president and our vice president are exactly who some very intelligent people wanted to have in there so that they could exact the plan that they wanted to exact. I think these two at the top are no more than a couple puppets for some very smart people who like you said, are exacting their plan. Initially, I thought maybe it was just ignorance or just doing a terrible job. But then the more I watched it, I realized on the southern border, this is deliberate. They're deliberately attempting to undermine America, the rule of law. And they told us in 2020 they were going to reinvent America, and that's what they're trying to do.
Well, and you see it now, especially with the attacks that are happening with the Second Amendment, which is just egregious and on every level.
Look at that. I mean, I've just finished writing my book. I know we're going to talk about it, but it's based on the poem by Rudyard Kipling called "If." And there's one part that says, if you can see your words twisted by knaves to set a trap for fools. And I talk about how the Second Amendment, the Founding Fathers could not have they probably said, hey, let's make this as clear as possible. Let's make it so a child could understand it. And they did. And guess what? We still have knaves who are deceitful or unscrupulous men. That's the definition of a knave, a dishonest or unscrupulous man. We still have knaves twisting this to set a trap for fools. I talk about if you want to talk just statistics and numbers, every year there's probably around 400 to 500 deaths at the hands of rifles every year. In the last year, and now almost every year it's increasing, we are seeing deaths over 100,000 from fentanyl. Over 100,000 fentanyl deaths every year. So you tell me, as a sheriff, which is the one that's most important? Which one should I be focusing on? the rifle deaths or the fentanyl deaths. So here are some statistics on the Second Amendment. So every year we average probably 400 to 500 in this country of 350 million people. And I heard a report the other day that there's likely over 20 million AR-15s that are owned in this country. In a country with that many guns, with that many people, we see typically between 400 and 500 deaths caused by rifles every year. By their rationale, it should be hundreds of thousands. If guns truly do kill people,
right,
which they don't, guns are an inanimate object. They are merely just a tool. So they will not hurt anybody unless somebody picks it up and you hurt somebody with it. But every year now, we are seeing over 100,000 American civilian deaths, and that number is increasing every year, caused by fentanyl coming across the southern border. So when you talk to me as a sheriff, what do you think my focus should be on? The 450 deaths in a country of 350 million, or the 100,000 and rising deaths caused by fentanyl that our government doesn't even lift a finger to try to stop? They have completely turned a blind eye to it. Now, the good men and women of CBP and Border Patrol, they do their job, and they do it very well, but they have no support from this administration. When people say to me, I always tell people, don't give an inch on the Second Amendment. Do not give an inch on the Second Amendment.
You had a pretty clear statement about that in Prescott at the Save America rally.
Yeah, I was on stage and I said, let's send a message to the media in Washington, D.C. that we will not give an inch on the Second Amendment. I mean, this is the line in the sand that Americans must draw, because this is the same thing England tried to do to the Americans in the American Revolution, is take their guns, and you saw how that turned out. We don't want that in this country. We want them to just leave the Second Amendment alone and, frankly, stop encroaching on our rights. That's really what it's about. When I tell people about the Second Amendment, I said, take the guns out of it. For me, this is about an amendment to the Constitution. If you're willing to change, if you're willing to give a little on the Second Amendment, what's next? The First Amendment, maybe you can only go to church one Sunday out of every month, or maybe you can only speak freely in certain venues, or maybe the press really doesn't have quite as much freedom, and maybe you can only assemble once a year to redress your grievances with your government. What will be changed next? Maybe they'll change it to where the police can indiscriminately search your house. Maybe you can no longer plead the Fifth Amendment. They'll change that. All of these things come into play. So it's not about guns. For me, this is about changing an amendment to the Constitution, which I'm not okay with. I think that we need to protect the Bill of Rights, and that's what it's about for me. And so, no, I won't give an inch. I don't think they need to alter it in any way, shape, or form.
Well, any change to the Constitution is always going to elicit. It's never a change in a good way. Even when you go back to things, good things like the Civil Rights Act or the Equal Rights Act, those were changes to the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, which elicited more government programs, more government overreach, and more infringement on the personal liberty of Americans. And even though it was, for a good thing, we want everybody in America to have equal rights, to have the baseline foundation of freedom. But that doesn't happen through more government control. And when you try to, if they were to, let's say, the Second Amendment, take that away, what's that going to do to due to government overreach? They're going to be able to do whatever they want. They're going to take the ATF from 5,000 employees to 50,000 employees. Right. to goose stepping down the street and kicking down doors.
Well, look at what happened in Australia is a perfect example. They took all their guns, and during the draconian lockdowns of 2020 and 2021, I mean, these guys were literally being put in COVID camps. I mean, this is... People from Australia will tell you, don't give up your Second Amendment. That's what's saving us.
Have you seen the H.R. 1808 bill that just passed in the House?
I heard about it. I've been writing my book this week, so I haven't. But I've listened to a few things and saw how dangerous that is.
Well, it was just about a book long. I think there's 52 pages in the bill where it lists specifically every make, model, and manufacturer of semi-automatic weapons that they're trying to ban.
Well, here's the thing. I can't control what happens in Washington, D.C., but what I can control is what happens in my county. And the job of the sheriff in our county constitutionally says that I have to suppress any affrays, any insurrections or riots or crimes that come to my knowledge. It also says in there that I can command as many inhabitants of the county as I deem necessary to accomplish my mission. So I'll just make every law-abiding citizen in my county a posse member or deputize them or do whatever I have to do to where they can maintain those and make sure that they have the ability to have the guns that I need them to have to be able to call them up for the posse if I need to. So we're going to do what we have to do I'm going to do what I have to do, and I know a lot of other sheriffs will as well, do what we have to do to protect those guns no matter what, and protect our people. But I just don't see this flying in the Senate, and I also don't see this flying in I don't think it stands up to the challenge in the Supreme Court either. I think it gets shot down.
I mean, it's kind of hard not to shoot it down when there's very clear language, shall not be infringed, which the fact that I can't mail order a 240 Bravo to my front door is already infringement in and of itself.
Yeah, I mean, look, well, they've already screwed up the laws very much so. I mean, it's shall not be infringed. That's it. When people ask me all the time, well, do you think they should have this or that? I said, look, it says shall not be infringed. So what part of that don't they understand?
Yeah. Well, even and as dumb as some of them are, like, with bump stocks. Bump stocks are dumb. They're like, yeah, it's cool to shoot fast and stuff like that, but they are incredibly impractical for any real use because you're just wasting ammo at that point. As a amateur gunfighter, that's my take on it. Bump stocks are stupid, but it's still that infringement. And then you go back to like 84 with Reagan doing their weapons ban. Like, it's just even the good guys, or the quotation marks there, air quotes, good guys. Like, it's a very, very steady agenda.
The people in government don't like. There's three things that they'll never really fix because they want to fight about it every year, every political season: abortion, immigration, and guns. It gives them the ability to fight about it. Nancy Pelosi, when she got up there and said that they passed this bill in the House, was so gleeful about it and so happy. I think they all know that it's not going to go anywhere. It shouldn't go anywhere. But they do this as a political ploy. They can go now later and say, I was the one who passed H.R. 1808. I signed that in the House. And it's just all a bunch of games. And we're the people that the games are being played on. And that's what irritates me.
So what do you think Americans need to do to push back against those games, or kind of game the game in order to play back?
The only way you can do it is you got to vote these turds out. I mean, we need term limits in. I was looking for the term. I was trying to think of the term. We need term limits in Congress and for judges. The judges in Congress are the ones screwing this country up for the most part. Judges by doing case law and not following what they should be doing, which is the Constitution or the law, and interjecting their personal feelings. And then Congress, getting in there, guys in there for 50 years, 40 years. It just wasn't designed for that. This is something that they should be short terms in. It'll seriously reduce the corruption that exists in there. But the problem is it's the fox guarding the hen house. The guys that would actually have to pass the bill for term limits are the ones that are exploiting these jobs and the fact that there is no term limits.
Well, and it also just turns into such a money game over there. You look at for example, this H.R. 1808. Either they're turds with no backbone who never should have been voted in the first place, which is probably true, or they're fickle enough to be convinced by a dollar bill to vote one way or another on certain bills, and they have no interest in the rights and liberties of their constituents.
There's got to be a ton of money flying around right now in Washington D.C. of both from people that do want gun legislation, and also from people that don't want gun legislation. Just think about the amount of money that some of these congressmen and senators are raising right now from lobbyists from both sides wanting to pay them to make sure that they vote the way they want them to vote. And it's just all about money, and this is the corruption that exists when you allow these people to be there for so long. They're feckless. They've done nothing for this country. Over the last 2 years, the president, the House, and the Senate have all been of the same party. Yet they've failed to pass pretty much anything. The only things they have passed are things that have just absolutely I don't want to say destroying America, but they are hurting America.
Well, even, quotation marks here, white knight legislatures and politicians, if they'll try to do the right thing, they'll try to, be the Boy Scout, but they just get snuffed out.
Well, you're one of 435 or one of 100. People will ask me all the time, you should run. First of all, I take this as a compliment because they say, Sheriff, you should run for office. And I always tell them, I am already in office. I am an elected official. To me, that says that I'm doing my job in a way that it doesn't make them feel like I'm a politician or so. But they'll say, hey, you should run for a higher office. And I'm like, look, I think I want to be where my voice is loudest for God, family, and freedom. And right now, I think as a sheriff, my voice is as loud as it can get right now. And I don't know that I'd be interested in running for an office, Senate or Congress. I don't think I'd be a good legislator, first of all, because I would look at a bill and say, hey, look, 80% of this looks pretty good, but 20% of it sucks. So, no, I'm not going to vote for it. And I just don't think I would be very liked up there if I did that job. So I think I'll just stick with my sheriffing job.
Well, it's like Ron Swanson where he's like, I enjoy saying no. It lowers their enthusiasm, which they need. Those suits up there, man. They and again, it goes back to that leadership of the administration where shady characters feel emboldened by that weak leadership to act shady.
Yep.
And to push shady things because they know no one's going to bite back.
And there's a saying, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And, when people ask me, hey, you should run for office, I'm like, no, I'm like where I'm at. Or they'll ask me, I'll go speak somewhere, and they'll say, what are you running for? And I'll tell them, I'm not running for anything. I just love this country. I love this country, and I'm willing to spend my time trying to fix it and save this country. And that, to me, is what matters.
Well, you talk about it in your first book, but, those principles that the country was founded on, I mean, that's really what it is about for you. And as it should be for any politician, but...
Well, that's where the world is chaotic. It's topsy-turvy, the rough seas, whatever you want to call it. The way to deal with that is not get more complex. The way to deal with that is to get back to the basics. And I think if you look inside of yourself and figure out what is it you truly believe in, which for me is God, family, freedom, and guns, though that's what I believe in. And so it makes it really easy for me to say, no, I'm going to take a stand against this because it goes against my values and the values that I think this country was built on. And so if I had a message for those listening today is get back to the basics. Get back to the basics of what you believe, of what this country was founded on, and that's the way we see our way through these trying times.
Well, it's so interesting because if you look around the world, every country has a baseline, a fundamental shared culture. If you go to Russia, there's Russians there, and babushkas and the little egg dolls that one's bigger than another, and they drink vodka and eat cabbage. And then if you go to China, Guess what's in China? Chinese. And they have their dragons and that, the dynasty, heritage and legacy. If you go to
And delicious food.
They do have good. I'm a big fan of Panda Express myself. But then if you go to Finland, there's Finlanders there who speak Finnish. And and this isn't some nationalist rant, but what Americans fail to understand and overlook is that there is a culture and a heritage in America, and it is God-fearing, liberty-loving, and you could say disobedient. Where if you look at what America was founded on in the 1770s, that's what every single naturalized citizen in this country belongs to. That is the heritage. And I think the sooner that Americans can embrace that, instead of saying, well, oh, I'm a so-and-so American. Oh, I'm a this American. I come from this. And they say, no, this is my culture, this is my legacy, and this is what I'm going to continue forward in my posterity. That's gonna be the quickest way to level the playing field, or level out the contention, the discord, and all the different views that so many people have, because everybody feels like they're from a different place, they have a different creed, a different culture. Once you zeroize that and say, hey, listen, this is what being an American is about. These are the morals and values. This is the culture and the standards that we uphold in this country. Once everybody gets on that, then things get a lot more simple, as you were talking about from there.
And you're exactly right. You look at after 9/11, Americans came together. The reason people feel different and they feel like they have a different set of values or cultural backgrounds or whatever is because of our mainstream media and our politicians. Their messaging is divisive. Their messaging wants to separate out. Now they're separating out trans people and the LGBTQ community. They want to separate you out by race. They want to separate you out by your religion. They want to separate you out by your political beliefs. Whatever they can do to separate you and to distract you and create chaos amongst the herd is what's important. I always tell this story, and when I speak, why do zebras have stripes? Well, some say it's because it's for the flies and it works against the flies. Other people might say, well, it's for camouflage. No, if it was for camouflage, they'd be tan like a lion. A lion could be 2 feet in front of you and you wouldn't see him. So a scientist wants to understand, why do zebras have stripes? So he goes out, he's sitting there, he's watching the herd, he's making a note, he's watching this zebra, he looks down, makes a note, looks back up, he can't find that zebra he was watching. The zebra blended in with the other ones. So he's like, I got an idea. I'm going to take this bucket of red paint, I'm going to get out there in my Jeep, I'm going to drive out, and I'm going to paint an X on the butts of the red X on the butts of a few of the zebras. So he does it, comes back the next day, thinks he's pretty slick, gets up in the morning, goes to look at those zebras. The lions ate those zebras, or the predators, I should say, ate those zebras. The moral to the story is they can't hunt the herd. The predators can't hunt the herd. They got to be able to identify one zebra and hunt that one zebra. What he realized was the zebra's stripes were not camouflage from their surroundings. They were camouflage for each other. It's the we the people concept. As the herd of zebras stood together, they were powerful. The predators were unable to come in and really hunt them. But if they can separate one or two of them out, or a whole group of them out, they can start to hunt them. Now, you still need zebras like me who will paint a big red X on their butt and go out there and put themselves in harm's way with the predators. The herd still needs that. But the strength of the zebra herd, just like the strength of the American people, is the we the people, standing together, not letting people divide us on all these issues, not letting the mainstream media or the politicians divide us, That's what we need. So it like you said, it's got to go back to us as Americans just coming together and saying we're all just Americans. This is still the greatest country in the world. That's why over 300,000 people try to come here every month. I can attest to the fact that 300,000 people show up at our border every month trying to come into this country illegally. They don't come here because this country sucks. They come here because they want freedom. They come here because they want a piece of the American dream. They come here because this is the greatest country in the world. We just need them to do it the legal way and not illegally.
Now, how would you say that Pinal County does in regards to that we the people concept?
I think that's a great question. I think Pinal County does a really good job. You know, I went down to the Walmart a few weeks ago. It was right around July 4th. I think it was July 3rd, actually. And, everybody was just wearing, pro-America shirts and hats. And I know I leaned over to my wife and I just said, I love this place. I love Pinal County. I love their patriotism, and I love the fact that they love America. And it's very apparent. Part of that is because Pinal County's really not an affluent county. We're probably like mid-income and a little bit of low income. And so what you get are just a lot of hardworking, blue-collar people that love and appreciate God, family, freedom, and they want to live in a place where that's protected.
I've definitely noticed that since I've been back in Arizona, where normally you go around the country, you're pretty far-fetched to find anybody carrying a gun anywhere. Out in Arizona, everybody is. It's crazy.
They do. They like to open carry too, which, look, I encourage you to carry whatever you want. I carry concealed, which in Arizona, by the way, anybody listening that's not from Arizona, we have our constitutional carry state, so you can carry a gun on you, whether open carry, concealed, and you don't have to have a permit for it.
Well, every state's concealed carry if you're not a weenie, if you're not scared.
That's true. That's true.
But it is. I mean, and again, I don't like open carry too much because that's kind of painting a red X on you for a predator. It's like, oh, hey, that guy, what's up? That guy is packing, so I'm gonna.
But you know what? The reality is that the predators, they're not lions. They're jackals. They're hyenas. They take advantage of weak points. Them seeing a guy carrying a gun on his hip, honestly, we never have cases of those people being attacked. Why? Because those predators are looking for weak targets. They're looking for somebody who doesn't have the ability to protect himself. And so even though as goofy as it may be sometimes, their holster is sagging off their belt, that gun is probably keeping the predators at bay, and I doubt that they'll be a target because predators are weak, and they go after these predators, the criminals, they go after weak targets.
Well, so do the suit and tie predators as well.
They do too.
Now, you kind of mentioned earlier that you were just finishing up another book.
I did. I wish I had a title for it. I know we've been talking about what the title will be. As of right now, the working title is "You'll Be a Man, My Son," and it's based off of the poem by Rudyard Kipling. Just talks about principles of life. I've kind of injected some stories from the founding fathers in there, a few of my own stories, and just some principles that I think that will help govern your life, and especially in a time like this. It's crazy, and hopefully it'll help, with a young teenager out there who you're trying to raise that kid. Maybe this will help as well. I am no author. I don't know why I write the books. I just, it's probably more of being able to, if it helps one person, then, I guess it was worth it.
Yeah. Well, and, especially reaching out to the youth, the Gen Z crowd today. There's such a deficiency in moral aptitude and I don't want to say masculinity because there's, he's and hers and z's and zays and theys and thems in the Gen Z crowd, but there's such a deficiency in traditional values and any sort of grit. And
That's why I wrote my first book, American Sheriff, Traditional Values in a Modern World. I think it's important to have those same traditional values that our founding fathers had. People. I'm not here to tell you that the founding fathers were perfect men or they were great men because they did great things. But I'm not here to tell you that they were all perfect. A lot of them believed in God but not religious. I think there was one Catholic who signed on the Declaration of Independence. They were all of varying backgrounds, but they found a way to come together.
I think Thomas Jefferson was even he was agnostic, wasn't he?
They had a belief in a power even George Washington. If you read a lot of George Washington's writings, he always refers to providence. He doesn't really refer to God. He refers to providence a lot of times. And so, but these were God-fearing men, but they were men inspired. They were men that clearly were put on the earth for that time, for that purpose, so that, in my opinion, God could put together this country, those documents, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, so that we could be here on this earth and here in America, where we have the best country for religious freedom, for freedom to be great. To be honest with you, just freedom to be great, and that was because of the sacrifices of those founding fathers and men who were willing to put it all on the line.
I think that scares a lot of people too when you put it like that. You have the freedom to be great, and I think that's why so many kids nowadays get trapped into that Marxist idea where you can just be told what you're going to be. You can be told who you are, what you're going to be, and what you will amount to. And let me tell you, to any kid listening to this who fell into the Marxist trap, you're not going to be able to work on your liberal arts, crap that you think that it's so important. You're going to get a pickaxe and you're going to be sent to a coal mine.
Yeah, those are the first ones. If you were to ever become a communist or a socialist society, the first ones you get rid of are the ones that were the turncoats, the ones who weren't loyal to the country they had. Let's hope that it never gets to that point. Let's hope that Americans wake up, which I think they are. I go all over the country. Don't let the mainstream media and the politicians fool you. The majority of Americans believe in this country and believe in freedom. We still got some knuckleheads out there that are just so party line that they can't see, the damage that's being done to this country. But let's hope that eventually they do see it.
Well, I think that I love that Tony Robbins quote where he says, "Our greatest fear is that we're not inadequate. Our greatest fear is that we are capable beyond measure."
That's right. It actually comes from Marianne Williamson. Sometimes it's attributed to some people have moved. Tony Robbins has done something with it. A lot of people attribute it to Nelson Mandela, but it's actually a Marianne Williamson, which is in my new book, and it's true. It's our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate, but that we are powerful beyond measure.
I think that's why people fear freedom.
People. Yeah,
that's why they fear freedom. They're like, "Oh, this is what's going to allow me to be capable beyond measure." Like, that scares me. Let me just let me just look away from that. Let me just not bother with that.
It's like when you learn how to drive. You get in the car, you're just like white knuckled on the steering wheel. You barely touch the gas, or you hit the brakes too hard because you're afraid of what the vehicle can do. And then as you learn how to drive, then there's other cars that are even faster. And you get in there and you're like, even though you know how to drive, you're like, I'm a little afraid of what this vehicle can do, what its capability is. And most people who own fast cars never really understand truly how powerful that car is. Our lives are the same way. Some people push it. They get faster and faster cars. They get better and better. They push their lives more and more. But the majority of the people have no idea just how great they are and how fast their own car can go, their personal car, their life, if they just let it, just push on the gas.
So what would you say to average Americans who are looking to take more ownership in their lives in regards to their personal liberty and in regards to leadership?
Do it. mean, that's it. It's just about action. When we would do SWAT, you'd do drills, and from the military, the worst thing you can do is be stagnant. You've got to move. Whether you're moving towards or you're moving away from it, you got to move, or you become a target. And so just start taking small steps, put action into place, and you will see the universe or God or providence or whatever it is you believe in is waiting to open the doors for you. It wants to give you everything that the earth has. Do you have the courage to go get it? And that's really what it's about, is pushing yourself outside of your comfort zones, getting into these areas where you have no idea what you're doing, and figure it out. But it starts with just action. You ain't going to happen sitting on the couch playing video games. I can tell you that right now.
I think it's interesting when you put it like that, like not knowing what you're doing. Nobody who's ever made it really has known what they're doing.
No. Look, I know this is a silly example, but we're sitting out here in Minnesota in front of our fifth wheel, and this is the maiden voyage of the fifth wheel. I've never owned a fifth wheel. I've never driven a fifth wheel.
And this isn't just any fifth wheel. This is a 40-foot,
it's a big fifth wheel.
It's huge.
It's tall. It's big.
It's about as big as you can get.
I got the truck. I got the fifth wheel put in on a Thursday. On Saturday morning, I went up to Prescott and spoke at President Trump's rally. On Saturday morning at 3 o'clock in the morning, we hooked this thing up and started driving with it. That was the first time. I didn't know how to use I didn't have any idea how to drain the tanks. As a matter of fact, 2 of them were missing, the pool rods to be able to even empty them. I knew nothing about it. But what I did know is I'm capable. I believe in myself and my capabilities of figuring it out. And thank you to the internet and a few other things. We came on this journey completely unknowing of what we were doing, and we figured it out. I know it's a silly example, but that's how life is. If it's not scaring you, you're not doing enough.
Now, I know the answer to this question because I've unfortunately had to make several of these and to cook several of these, but for the listeners, how do you like your steaks?
Well, it depends. If you go to a good steakhouse, medium well. I've really shifted towards a solid medium well guy. I don't like it if it's not cooked. I want the moo taken out of my steak. I know a lot of people out there are like, no, you got to eat it rare or medium rare. No, I don't like the taste of it. And I eat my steak hot. Like, I eat it fast. If you give me a 24-ounce steak, I'll probably have it done in about 3-4 minutes because I like my steak just burning hot.
Are you guys going to hit Amarillo on the way back at the Big Texan? Do
No,
the
I think
old
we're gonna
72-ounce steak?
You're going to fly right through. This is the way back. We took our time coming out here. On the way back, it's going to be go, go, go. We're going to try to get back as quick as possible.
Now, where can people find you to see what you're up to see the release of your book, buy your current book?
Check me out at American Sheriff on Instagram. Is probably where I'm most active. Truth Social, American Sheriff. I'm trying to be better about posting there. Twitter, Sheriff Lamb 1, although I never post anything on there. It's full of bots and haters. Let's see, Facebook is Sheriff Lamb. And then please check us out at AmericanSheriff.com. And then you can get my books and my wife's books. She's got a new book coming out as well. We don't know what the title is yet. You can get those at AmericanSheriff.com or SheriffsWife.com.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then if you want to support the podcast, go to at Fear Not Do Right on Instagram, fearnotdoright.com. We got merch. We got American Sheriff coins, challenge coins.
American Sheriff shirts. And we're just constantly trying to build this up for you.
Which,
for anybody out there, Cade probably doesn't ever talk about it, but we built this company so that coming out of the military, he would have something that, his own little business he could run with. So go support him. He served this country. Go support him, buy some merch, and check out the podcast.
Awesome. And thanks for listening, guys.